So yeah, what's up? How you've been?
I've been good. How about you? How's everything? How's Berlin?
Good. Here, Berlin, wild. As you probably know,
Yep.
when we met here. So yeah, how is LA? What's the time difference right now? What's the time at your place?
Minus 9 hours from you. LA is good. The weather is. We are in June gloom, which is like from essentially end of May to beginning of July. Every day is gray and cloudy in the mornings.
Yeah,
Sometimes it burns off in the afternoon. Sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, from basically, yeah, like I said, end of May to beginning of July, it's just gray and kind of colder and whatever. It's starting to burn off now, but yeah.
classic. So you have a classic Berlin November experience,
Yeah.
right?
Basically. Yeah.
Yeah, but when we met, you were here in Berlin with Fraser. And
Yeah.
what did you do? Also, I kind of didn't understand fully, like, what's your role? Were you touring as well? You had some dates, or were you just traveling
Yeah,
around?
I was supposed to have more dates, but a couple things fell through. I did play in Paris that trip, but yeah, like I said, I was supposed to have a couple other dates and they all kind of fell through and things changed last second. Which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. And then part of it was like, going like I was meant to possibly have a gig in Berlin as well. That didn't happen, but I had already gotten my ticket. So I just went, and then it was, going with Fraz to meet you guys because we were doing the label together. Yeah, and also I just hadn't been to Berlin for a while, so it was just good to kind of get over there and see people,
Get it? Nice.
Yeah, it had been
So,
since I think 2019 since I'd been there, so quite a while.
mhm. And how do you like it?
Um, yeah, it's all right, it has its ups and downs. It's not the prettiest city, right? So it doesn't have that like charm to it, but it's nice that a lot of people live there. But it's cool to visit. I don't think I could ever live there. I've never been to other parts of Germany, so I'd like to go to those places too. My only reference is Berlin, but I know that there's some parts of Germany that are beautiful. So I'd like to go to explore different areas. But yeah, so far I've only been to Berlin, and it's like it's fine, to go visit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
depends on what's
yeah,
your purpose there, right?
yeah.
Um, you mentioned labels, so you have your own label,
I
right?
do. Yeah,
The Crisis of Man, and
yeah,
what you help Fraz with the parallel visions, or how does it
yeah,
work?
yeah. I'm a label manager. We've only done one release so far, and it's a bit rocky for a variety of reasons. I mean, we haven't eventually sorted out, but we had some distribution issues, and that kind of was a unique experience that I've never dealt with before. But
Mhm.
yeah, the label has a lot of potential, so we're just sort of plugging along, planning the next releases and such. And since I've been running a label for 5 years, I have some inside knowledge on how to do a lot of stuff. Not as much as other people, right? And I've never done vinyl before, so that was also part of the new experience. But otherwise, yeah, it's cool. I like doing that kind of stuff. I enjoy the process of all of that. So yeah, again, we've only done one release, so we've still got a lot of work to do to kind of get the label up to where we want it to be. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun experience for sure.
Nice, but yeah, you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah, exactly,
nothing was
exactly.
ever built in a second.
No,
Um,
for sure.
and can you explain to me, let's say, in very simple terms, because I mostly worked, let's say, in event promotion and now more on the booking side, let's say more on the assistance, but I don't know so much about publishing and music releases. Like
Okay.
how does the process of setting up a label look like?
Well, it can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be, right? I mean, there's a lot of tools now at your disposal that make it really easy to launch your own label. And there's, like I said, there's different levels to it, right? I mean, you have
Mhm.
the super grassroots underground labels, or you have the major labels, right? Like Armada, for example. That's like probably the biggest electronic music label like on the planet, right? And they've got so many
Mhm.
different divisions and different sub labels, and like so that's a really complex giant machine, right? Or like Spin In or something like that. Or like I said, you can literally just go on Bandcamp right now and start a label, right? And just start releasing music right now.
Mhm.
And a lot of people do that, and it just really depends on what your goal is. Are you trying to get to that Armada level? Obviously, they've been around for what, like 30 plus years or something, right? So that's
Yeah.
something
Yes.
that took a lot of time to get to that level, right? And they also have a huge team and such. So is it possible? Of course it is. Especially these days, it's probably easier now to do it than it was then, just in terms of like logistics and stuff. But if you are looking to just have a place to release your music, then there's a lot of tools, as I said, at your disposal, that you can use to really bring a lot of attention to your label. Whereas before, back in the day, it was a lot harder. You know what I mean? But I find myself, and I think Parallel Vision's sort of in the middle, I would say, right? Obviously, Parallel Visions is very small just because we only have one release. We are doing vinyl, which does kind of add a bit more weight, I guess you could say, to the label, just because it's an extra step that is expensive, and when people see it, they still think, oh, okay, cool, that's a legitimate label, right? But for like my label, for example, we're only doing digital right now, and it's fine. I mean, as much as I love vinyl, right? I mean, there's nothing better than receiving your music on vinyl. But like, it's these days, most of the people buying vinyl are just collectors. You know what I mean? And that's not to
Mhm.
take away from the emphasis of vinyl, because like I said, I love it. But it's just that it's one of those things where it's it's not very profitable anymore. And again, most of the people buying it are not playing it, right? Or they're just playing it at home and traveling and touring with vinyl. You
Mhm.
obviously do have those the handful that do, right? But it's, to me, vinyl is something that's a little bit more special these days. More of almost like a collector's item thing. So if I'm gonna press vinyl, I want to do something really special with it. And great, of course, if I did have disposable income like that, then yeah, I would press the vinyl. But I don't right now, so it's the thought of doing that is just not really something I'm too interested in at the moment. Although I do have some ideas for down the road, but right now, especially for my label, I just electronics fine. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think that the not pressing to vinyl does make it a bit more challenging to help your label stand out, right? Because if you're pressing to vinyl, like I said, it kind of adds this extra bit of weight to the name, right? Like, oh, they're
Mhm.
pressing to vinyl, so it's like a serious label, right? Like,
They put effort
um,
in or something.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, if you're not doing that, then it's like, well, it's a lot easier to just do a digital label. But in saying that, right, like then that means that label has to really do something different. And I would like to think that that's what my label is doing. It's pretty crazy to see how much it's grown. It'll be turning 5 years this September, and
So which label will it be? 25 years.
Crisis of Man. Sorry, Parallel Visions just started, so that's a brand new baby that just launched earlier this
Yeah.
year.
So
But
five
yeah,
years is Crisis of Man.
yeah, yep.
Okay.
And it started out just as a place for me to release my music, and again, like, just pretty bare bones. I had a Bandcamp page and distribution. I was with one distributor and I just really did not like their process, and it was just kind of a pain in the ass. And so I switched to Triple Vision, and I've been with them ever since, and it's been great. And as I said, there's so many tools now at your disposal, like these big YouTube channels and premieres and stuff like that. Whereas before, like the PR agents were a bit of a gatekeeper in the sense of like they had access to these websites or these platforms where you would use the PR service to get premieres, and then use a promo service to get out and get to your music to a bunch of DJs and stuff. But now it's not quite the same. Right now, it's a lot easier to approach these platforms yourself, so you can kind of skip the middleman of either the PR companies or once you've built up your own network or your own sort of promo list of artists, right? Then you really don't need a promo service either, because what I came to find was that like using a promo service, it's really great when you're first starting your label because no one really knows, right? I mean, unless you're like a famous DJ, right, and you've already got like a big like roster of artists you can send music to. It's hard for people to even know that you exist because there's just so much music being released every day. But when you use a promo service, right, your music is now getting in front of possibly thousands of people. But on the flip side, right, you always look at the downloads, right, and it says like downloaded for R Houghton, or all these big DJs, but it's like they're not downloading it personally, right? It's like an automated thing that happens. But the other thing is, this is why I stopped really using it, is that you were getting countless random artists that you never heard of, like, oh, great track, and it's like, cool, thank you, but like that's not who I'm trying to send my music to. You know what I mean? Like, and again, that's not a dig on them. It's just that like I'm trying to get my music in front of the people that matter to me, and I've literally never heard of most of these people. So it's like, and it adds up. You know what I mean? Like I don't. The promo service I was using was about, I think it was like 200 euros. It was like 200 or 250 euros per release for promo, and it's like it's a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like I do think it could be worth it for big releases, like if you're doing an album or you're doing like a big compilation or something like that. But for the most part, like singles and just regular EPs and stuff, if it's like, unless it's something that's like groundbreaking stuff, right? Like I don't really see the benefit of it anymore, especially because of like how easy it is to just message people on Instagram. Like if you know how to network, you can just build up your own promo list with ease. You know what I mean? So again, it's like, do you want to spend money on promo like that, or like
just put the effort
elsewhere?
in of trying to network,
Yeah,
like offline or what?
Yeah, or somewhere like Hate on YouTube, right? Like the biggest techno channel on YouTube, right? Like they're not free, right? But that money spent on there is, I would say, much better spent than promo services for the most part. And I'm sorry if you work for a promo service, anybody that's watching this, but yeah, I just think that a lot of these promo services, they've just got a lot of people that are assigned up to them that like are just not really, again, your target audience. But I guess ultimately it just depends, again, like what you're trying to achieve. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it should be quality contacts over just spreading it out to like random numbers. Okay.
Exactly. It's like, yes, of course, ultimately you want people playing your music, and the more people playing your music, the better. But again, it's like you want the important people playing your music more so than just, I would say, just random nobodies. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that I'm not a random nobody or anything, but just, again, it's like, you need to know who you're trying to appeal to, I guess you could say, and go that way, but everybody's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
and again, you learn, you grow, and there's a time and place for everything for sure. Using a promo service in the past definitely helped my label grow a bit. But again, ultimately at the end of the day, it's a tool, right? And you have to be willing to put in the work on all the other fronts to grow the label itself. You know what I mean? And something else I found interesting actually is that the growth on the label Instagram page has been pretty decent. You know, I put zero effort into marketing that. It's more so just like a landing page, right? You know what I mean? And just a place to upload the videos so that there's, again, sort of like a place to revert back to, just so it's there. And it's been growing, you know? I mean, it's small, sure, but like that's no promotion, no nothing, you know, which is cool. It's purely organic, just people from tags and that kind of stuff, people just going and saying, I like this, I'm going to go follow this, you know? Whereas like for an artist, right, like you're posting gig footage or you're posting clips of your, like whatever, right? Like you're doing more to get people to want to follow you. Whereas on the label page, it's just purely music, you know?
Get it. And for example, when you started, what was like what was your motive? Like, why create your own label? Why don't, let's say, try to release it somewhere else? Or what's the benefits, pros and cons
Well,
of one and another?
First and foremost, I did try and release it other places, and no one wanted to sign any of it. So I was like, okay, I'm sitting on like, at that time, I think it was probably close to like 24 tracks, right? That everybody was playing. So it's not that the music wasn't being supported. It was just that everybody said the same thing. Oh yeah, I really like it, but it just doesn't really fit the label. And at the time I was just like, what the hell? What does that even mean? You know what I mean? But now that I have my own label, I totally understand. Like I totally understand like that perspective. So I started the label as a place to, one, vent my frustration that no one was signing my music, but two, I'd always wanted to start a label. I had started a label previously, but it was super like all over the place and just not consistent and no game plan or anything. It was also kind of a place to release my music, but for a different project, but it just was like, it was basically nothing, right? But I'd always wanted to have a professional label. You know, I'd always wanted to have a really cool, cutting edge label where I was, you know, able to showcase music that I loved as well as my own music. And so, you know, on top of being frustrated that no one wanted to sign my music, again, I'd always wanted to do it. And it's sort of just like, well, I guess now I'm starting it. You know what I mean? So I started it and it was just my music for the first 2 years. Again, kind of sporadic. I was trying to be more and more consistent with it, but you know, I just kind of wasn't. But you know, it is what it is. Again, you kind of learn, and that's how you understand like where you're trying to go and whatever. So I did that for a couple of years, and then eventually started getting other people on the label, and then that just started growing and growing, and then eventually we got to sign people like Sarah Landry and Perc, and I've got another handful of huge artists that we are waiting on music from, and the label is really starting to take shape. And you know, it's a journey for sure. I mean, like I said, it's going to be 5 years, which like we're still very small, but people are really starting to know our name and our releases, which is really cool. And I think we've got a good logo and good branding going on. So it's just a matter of continuously putting out better and better music, which we're doing. And now, right, what started out as like a little place for my own music is now become one of the top underground techno labels in North America, which is pretty crazy considering it's just me basically running this little label from my studio. But again, it kind of just shows, right? Like these days, you don't need to have a huge team. You don't need to have all this stuff to create something. You know what I mean? You can do it on your own, right? It requires work, right? It's not easy, and it requires time and money, right? That's something people don't really understand is like none of this stuff is free. You know, it costs money. Whether that's money to have your stuff uploaded to YouTube channels, or whether that's mastering from like money, or gotta pay money for royalties and this and that, right? Like it costs money. Unless you're
Yeah, same as
somehow,
with events.
unless you're somehow making Aphex Twin level music, and it's just spreading like wildfire off of you simply uploading to Bandcamp, like it costs money, and even Bandcamp costs money, right? You have a month, you have to pay for monthly fees, right? To have an account, right? So I mean, is it possible to do everything for no money? Sure. But is it likely? No, right? Like we're not people like that are once in a lifetime, you know?
Mm.
But yeah, so that's why I started it. And it's been, like I said, it's been amazing to see it grow, and I can't believe it's already been 5 years. That's crazy to me.
And taking a look, let's say, back on this 5 years, you obviously learned a lot about the process, about probably a lot about yourself as well. If you would start a label tomorrow with the experience that you have, okay, but let's say we have a good example of Parallel Visions.
Yeah.
What did you do differently, let's say, starting this time compared to you starting 5 years ago? What are some of the
Yeah.
lessons that you learned?
So first and foremost, right, like Parallel Visions is also a vinyl label, so that's a new experience. But I learned that you got to have a plan, whereas I didn't really have a plan when I first started. Right? Like all I knew was like, oh, I want to have a cool label. Right? Okay, well, what does that look like? What does a cool label mean? But also, how do you get there, right? And not having a plan definitely set me back, because you can kind of have an idea of like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna release these when they're ready, and oh yeah, I gotta get the artwork. Oh, I was supposed to upload this and like release it like a couple weeks ago, but I'm kind of just, I haven't gotten the artwork done. Blah, blah, blah. It's like that doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like that's not a way to run a business, really, because ultimately it's a business, right? So you really got to be consistent and have a game plan, and stick to deadlines, and formulate a strategy in terms of like, okay, how many tracks, where are we gonna do premieres, what tracks are gonna get premiered, what platforms do you want to premiere them on, like, are we gonna use a PR service, are we not going to, again, now with Parallel Visions, is it gonna be vinyl? Yes, it is. Okay, where's the vinyl, who's the manufacturer, what are we gonna do for distribution, are we gonna do it ourselves, we're gonna have someone else do it, like, there's all of these different things. So first and foremost, as I said, having a plan is the biggest thing that I've learned. And I used to have a manager, and we don't work together anymore. We're all good. But what he helped me do was really get organized in terms of, folders and file naming and such like that, right? That was something that I'd kind of done a little bit before, but he helped me get like hyper organized with that. So yeah, planning and organization are probably the two biggest factors that will make or break your label, right? Like you could have the best music and artists in the world, but if you're all over the place, it's not gonna work. You know what I mean? Like you have to be hyper organized and focused on that type of stuff. And it's not easy at first, especially for someone that wasn't as organized like I was, to really have to like focus yourself into like getting these things done and just doing it, right? But I've seen what happens when I don't. And yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare. It's so much work that, like, the more organized you are, the easier it is to do all that work. You know what I mean? Like, like if I like, I use a Dropbox folder system, right? And like I can tell you right now what it kind of looks like, right?
Sure.
So on my Dropbox, right, I've got my actual artist Dropbox, right, and in there I've got all these different folders for different things like tours and this and that, right? But I've got a releases one, right, which instead of having two Dropbox folders, I've just got one folder with everything's inside of that. So within that one, right, I've got all my label assets, right? Cool. And then I've got every release year from 2019 till now, right? And within those folders, I've got all the releases organized by date, and within those folders, right, within each release folder, there's a thing for any press, any links to the release, any video assets, right, artist assets, all the artwork, the label copy, any footage from people playing it, and then the masters, right? Whereas before, it was kind of just like I would have maybe the release title and then just everything kind of thrown in that, like not in an organized fashion. But now it's like, okay, if you ask me, hey, I need the artwork for this one release and also the artist assets from this one, it within like seconds, I can just pull it up. You know what I mean? And that learning to utilize that to my advantage has made my life so much easier. And so, going back to parallel visions, right? Fraser, he had done a label in the past as well. It was like a really small one, whatever. But now that we're trying to do this in a more professional manner, I was like, well, hey, look, I've already got this file system. It's just drop and go. You know what I mean? And that in itself
Plug and play.
is great. Yeah, because I know how I work and he knows how he works. But when you come together to work with someone for, like on a new business, right? Like you have to meet each other in the middle, right? So maybe he's, not as organized as I am or vice versa, right? But now that we have this system, there's nothing left to question, right? There's no like, oh, where does this go? It's like, no, it's literally labeled exactly here. So, if like, for example, you guys are kind of helping out with the label as well, right? Oh, can you send us the link for this folder? Yep, here it is, right? It makes everything so much easier. And also, what I kind of brought to the table with Fraser and Parallel Visions is, I had already built the contacts up with distribution, with promo services, with these like YouTube channels and these Premiere platforms and stuff. So I just really brought all of the knowledge that I had built up over the years and the connections, and it just really made it so much easier, right? Now, the thing is, when you're doing vinyl, right, that adds a whole new level of complexity, as I said, right? Like, who's going to press the vinyl? How many copies? Is it going to be black? Is it going to be colored? Is it, like, what's the sleeve going to look like? Like, is it just all of these different things that are just adding, each one adds a new cost and also a new level of complexity to the production. We had an issue where UPS had actually lost the test pressing. And it's like, well, shit. Well, okay, that's not good, right?
Explain that to all of the artists.
Yeah, exactly. We got that sorted in the end, but still, it's like that was something that was completely out of our control, right? And also, we had some issues with distribution where they were getting like replying really slowly to us, and look, things happen, right? That's just something you have to kind of expect. But again, that was something that was out of our control, and it was kind of getting down to the wire, and we're like, hello, and then eventually things got sorted. But still, it's like, you just have to. Me having done this before, right? I expect that there's going to be some issues, right? Or that things are going to happen, right? Hopefully there's not going to be any issues, but even though I had not done vinyl, you just have to be ready for anything to happen. And now that we started vinyl, it's like, well, if you've never done it before, right? Like it can be a big headache, or it can be really, I don't want to say scary, but it can cause
It's demanding.
Yeah, and like, or it can stress you out. It can cause a lot of stress, is what I was trying to say, right? But for me, I'm just like, well, it's part of it. You know what I mean? And like, even though I don't have experience with vinyl, I already knew from other people saying about like what they've told me about pressing the vinyl. It's like I just knew that that you have to be ready for this stuff, and so having that experience definitely keeps you a lot calmer when things do hit the fan, right? Because it's like, well, it is what it is, right? Like, let's just fix it, like things are not going to be perfect always. So you just have to kind of roll with the punches and just try and keep a cool level head, because freaking out isn't going to change it, right? Like, for example, for the last release on my label, Crisis of Man, the wrong artist was tagged, right? And you know, I was just like, well, that's annoying, right? Like, it happens. It's happened in the past, but it's something that's fixable, right? So I just emailed distribution and I was like, hey, wrong artist is attached, and they're like, okay, we'll fix it. Not a week, but like the weekend went by, and then it was like Tuesday or something. I was like, still wasn't fixed. I was like, hey guys, just circling back, and like, oh, it'll be fixed tomorrow. It was fixed the next day, you know. But having no experience, you'd be freaking out, like, oh my god, like it's the wrong artist, and that's like, you know, these artists especially are looking to you as the leader to direct them and to guide them, right? Especially younger artists. So if you're freaking out, then they're going to freak out even more, right? But if you're calm and collected and you're like, it happens, we'll fix it, it's cool, all good, they're like, oh, okay, like it's fine, you know what I mean? We're good.
Yeah, because in the end of the day, okay, I mean, of course, it's serious, it's business, it's promotion, it's your profile on the line and everything. But okay, it's just like a music release, you know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's something that's fixable, you know. Nobody will die or anything. And
Yeah,
also
yeah.
an interesting point that you said, you know, stressing out and yelling and feeling bad won't fix anything. It's the same as I had, let's say, a few times with events or something like that, or let's say booking flights or flights being canceled. You know, I've
Mhm.
had a few times of artists, let's say, staying, hopefully, still in the middle of Europe, not on another continent. But okay, you
Yeah,
missed your flight. You missed your flight. So what?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
let's go. I mean, let's go. Here's a credit card. Here's a new flight. Let's go. Here's a new shuttle.
yeah,
Let's go. I mean, you fix
yeah,
it.
exactly. You
That's
just, I
it.
mean, it's just, you know, there's just some people that are naturally just more stressed out than other people. But, you know, like for me is what, like kind of what you're saying, like traveling and such, right? Like it happens. I actually, funny enough, when I left Berlin, this is the first time, it'll be the last time too, but I, for safety, you know, you put your passport and stuff the safety box in the hotel room. I put my passport in the safe, and I forgot it when I went to the airport to go home. So I got to the airport and I realized I didn't have my passport. I'm like, oh my god, I left it in the hotel. So I had to go back to the hotel, and it was like there was no way I was making that flight. Right? I was stressed. I'm gonna be honest. I was completely stressed. But
Mm.
then I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna do whatever I can. Right? I called my flight company, and I told them, I was like, look, I had an emergency. Like, I completely forgot my passport. Like, I'm not gonna make this flight. And they're like, okay, yeah, cool. We'll just put you on another flight. And they just booked me on another flight for free. And I was just like, whew, wow.
You just have to ask, right?
Yeah, no, you just exactly, yeah. But like, you know, as someone who's traveled quite a bit, right, over the course of my life, right, like I could have had a meltdown, but I didn't, right? Like I was just like, okay, like calm down, like let me just get this sorted, and I was able to take care of it. But you know, again, that just comes with business, you know, and like I said before, I think a lot of people forget that this is a business, right? Like yeah, we're artists, right? So there's a different level of connection to the business because it's a form of self expression. But like you have to remember that it is a business at the end of the day, you know. So treat it like one. Realize that things are going to happen, good and
Mm.
bad, but you can't it can't be the end of the world if something happens, right? It happens, and you know we are the ones that assign the positive or negative outlook on it, but ultimately things happen. They're going to happen forever. That's just, no matter what level you're at, it's going to happen, right? So just be prepared for that, but also learn that you how you respond to it is going to make that situation either a lot easier or a lot harder than it needs to be, you know.
Mm. Definitely. So yeah, it really comes down to how you interpret it, and also obviously how much experience you have. You know, if you've done something
Yeah,
10 or 20 times and something happens to you for the third time, you already know, okay, we're gonna fix it. And even if something new happens, you still have enough of experience prior to that you know that you're gonna fix it anyway. You know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And Think I would like to turn back to a little bit when you said that you have to be like generally very organized, which makes a lot of sense. But would you say that people, when it comes to creation and let's say starting any kind of project, can also get caught up into too much of planning? Because I also recognize here myself, for example, for a podcast, like let's say any kind of creative project, you think you have to be prepared, which is true, but at the same time, just go. It's good enough here. I was also thinking, oh, we need a camera, we need lightning, blah blah blah. Right now we have a phone and that's it. We're rolling. Have you ever had something like that with you? Let's say
Oh yeah, of
starting
course.
a label, putting music out.
Yeah, yes and no. Like, there's definitely been moments where I've done that, but I've also, for better or for worse, been one of those people that's just kind of like, let's just go for it, right? Maybe I should have stopped and thought about things and planned better, right? Instead of just going purely off of impulse. And I've had mixed results, right? That's kind of what happens when you just go off of impulse. But you had messaged me the other day because I posted something from Chris Williamson, and it's funny. He actually just posted something today about this exact thing, which is that the
Yeah.
title was said that life doesn't wait for you, right? It doesn't wait for you to get hyper organized and do all this kind of stuff. You just kind of have to go for it. And I think that's so true. Now, again, the more organized you are, the better most times. But sometimes, like, no matter how organized you are, you're not ready for what it is, right? Now, having some organization, right, will definitely be a benefit. But you also have to be kind of ready for anything. Now, the thing with my being organized is that, like with my label, that came after the impulsive decision to do it, right? Like, that came from learning and understanding, like, okay, like I've been doing it this way for a while, and this is becoming a bit of a roadblock, right? This is becoming a bit of a bottleneck. So I need to figure out something better to get rid of this bottleneck. That's where that came from, right? But the initial idea of just like, well, fuck it, I'm just gonna start the label now, that was kind of an impulsive decision, right? Would there have been any benefit of waiting? Maybe, right? Maybe if I had waited until it was a little bit bigger, like the label would have done better off the bat. But ultimately, like, you could say that forever, right? Like, how long do you need to wait to do something? And it's like, well, I mean, there's not really an answer for that. You know what I mean? Whereas, I guess a benefit of starting it like that, right, is that once I get to that next level, right, the label kind of comes with me, right? And so the label grows in tandem. Whereas if you wait longer, right, there's the benefit of like, well, you already have more weight to your name, so maybe you can get bigger artists right off the bat and this and that, right? But if you are, let's say you are going to wait to do this, right, and you're not going to have a team helping you, and you do have more weight to your name and you want to start bringing on bigger artists, the last thing you want to do is try and bring on big artists, right, and do this big thing but not be organized and not know how to run a label and have no idea what you're doing, because then, right, you're jeopardizing your relationship to these people, and now there's a lot more pressure for the label to succeed, right? And so if you kind of screw it up, right, off the get-go, well, then that in itself can harm your credibility and your relationships to people, and it can have a pretty bad impact, I would say, on your profile as an artist, right? Because it's like, oh, well, here's this big thing that should have been great, and you messed it up, right? Now, is it the end of the world? No, but still, it's like there's a much higher expectation of professionalism when your profile is bigger. You know what I mean? Whereas when you're small, right, you can kind of make those mistakes early on and get them out of the way, so that by the time you're at a credible level, the label is just a well-oiled machine, right? And then, right, you start getting on bigger artists, and their reaction, instead of like, oh shit, well, that was a waste of time, that was a waste of a track to release on this label, instead, right, they're impressed by your professionalism. They're impressed by you, like, by how
Delivering,
well you're running.
essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh man, this is the smoothest response, or smoothest release I've ever had. And I've had that compliment before too, right? And it's always encouraging, right? Because again, it's like, then it builds more respect for you, because it's like, okay, you're a smaller artist and you're running this really well organized, label, and everything was smooth. It was just sort of like, there was no headaches, there was no hiccups, there was no like, oh man, like questioning or doubting like that was a good idea, right? And then they're more keen to release with you down the road. For me, right, well, I can't say exactly what it is. I was with a friend of mine who's a really, really big artist and one of my favorite artists, and we were talking about remixes and stuff. And I mentioned, hey, I'd love to either remix something from like one of your recent tracks, or maybe this other track that I've always loved. And they'd said, oh well, the current stuff is already sorted, but I can get you the stems for that other track, and either we can release it on my label or your label, right? And I was just like, oh, okay, like, that's awesome, right? But that wouldn't have happened had I not been organized, and had I, again, had just started this label, and it was sort of like a all over the place type thing, I would imagine that who I am now as a person, it wouldn't have been as messy as it was when it first started. But ultimately, I'm glad that I started it when I did, because I was able to learn to navigate all of that stuff and get past all of that. And to now, again, like, I had this really just super organized, like, just drag and drop type system that makes my life so much easier, right? And again, like, you release on the label, and when it comes time to for your release to come out, right, here's the pack, here's everything you need, right? Everything's organized, and we don't have to question where anything is. It's just right there, ready to go. And it makes your life as an artist way easier, because I mean, in working with other labels myself, right, like, you'd be surprised how unprofessional a lot of these bigger labels are. You would think like, oh, like, that they've got money and this and that, but even still, right, like, there's a lot of things where you're just like, really? Okay, well, I would never do that. But yeah.
So yeah, that process really makes sense, and also, to, if I understand correctly, make the artist who releases on a certain label feel confident that everything is running smoothly, if I get it
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah,
What would
exactly. I
you
mean, it's
say?
like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's like you throwing a good event, right? Like, you throw an event and you book me to play, right? The better organized and ran your party is, the more likely I'm going to enjoy myself and want to come back, right? And the fans too, right? Whereas, you look at some of these other ones where it's just like things are all over the place, the parties are really poorly run, and everybody's frustrated. It's just like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of doing something like that if you're just gonna do it really half-assed?
Get it. So what would you say are like the two most important things for the artist to feel comfortable releasing on a label?
I would say,
Like some
first and
concrete
foremost,
example of the process.
yeah, I would say first and foremost, like, a smooth transaction, right? Hey, we need your music by this day. It's gonna go out on this day. Just get us, like, once we get the stuff, just follow directions and everything's good, right? So again, the organization, right, taking the guesswork out of them, for them, right, like, them not feeling like, oh, either the label's not responsive, or I just don't really know what's going on, right? Like, being really just upfront and um, methodical with everything. Again, sticking to do deadlines and sharing the plan, right? Helping them feel confident in their release, and also helping them feel secure, right? Helping them feel like the label, is not just using them for their own gain, and that the label is listening, and that the label is going to do whatever they can to ensure that the label succeeds as best as it can, right? Because there's plenty of labels out there that just want to sign tracks and it's like, I don't even know what the point of this is, but it's like, just sign tracks and just put releases out. But they don't do promotion, they don't do promo, they don't do anything. And it's just like, what is the point? Like, it's so much work to run a label that you might as well just go like a little bit further and just do these things to help the label grow, instead of just spamming releases on Beatport or Bandcamp. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, it doesn't make the artist feel good, right? Like, some of these big VAs, right? Like, some of these VAs are like 30 to 50 tracks, right? And it's not to say that that's necessarily bad, right? But at a certain point, it can feel like you're just another cog in the wheel, right? Like, if you're a name of like 50 names on a release, right, and the label's always doing these VAs, it's just like, well, how much do they actually value your music, And we want our work to feel valued, right? We want to feel like we have value, regardless of what it is. And so, a label should nurture that, and should leave no question in the artist's mind that they do value the artist, and that's why they are signing that artist's work, right? Like, the people that I sign, especially the smaller artists and stuff, is it more of a risk? Yeah, sure, because people don't really know who it is, right? But to me, that doesn't matter. To me, it's all about the music. And so this last release, right, this was these guys' first actual release ever, And to me, it was like, well, who cares? It's just, I like the music, right? But they, at least I hope they did, felt like their time was being valued, and that they were being valued, and that their work was appreciated and respected, because there's a lot of people out there for their own self-interest. And sure, right, like, ultimately the label growing helps my profile grow and this and that, right? But still, right, that doesn't mean that I can't do the same for them, right? I can't give them a good platform to release their music and to help their profiles grow. And I would say that that's one really cool thing that my label has been doing over the years, is being a platform for newer artists to, either do their first releases or their first full releases, right? And some of these artists have since gone on to release on big labels, and it's been, like, just being able to help them kind of get off the ground, right, has been great. And because I've been there, right? And I know how frustrating it can be. So I just treat people how I want to be treated, and I want to be treated with respect, and I want people to value my time and my work. And so that's what I do for the people on my label.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, at the end, like, feeling valued is the most appreciated feeling that as a person, you can get, right? That
Yeah, and
someone
also,
values your work.
yeah, and on top of that, right, like, if they feel valued and they feel like they're respected, then they're more likely to want to support the label down the road, right? Like, they're obviously going to do everything they can to promote their release. But for example, I've had multiple artists that I've released earlier this year who are sharing the releases now, right? So it's like, it's not even their release. They just feel, enough of a connection to my label to want to repost the releases on their own page, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's the best, because that's no work from you. That's not you asking, hey, do you guys mind sharing this? They're just doing it on their own. Now, had I been, we'll say, a less agreeable person, the likelihood would have been a lot lower, right? That they would have done that. But it's a simple thing, right? It's just again, treating people how you want to be treated, and ultimately, like, that comes back to you, right? It all comes back to you. And so if you're treating people with respect, you're going to get respect. And, I want to be looked back on as someone who treated people well, who respected people, and who helped make a difference, for the better. And so you got to do that. It's in the small actions every day. Again, being with the label, being responsive to the artists, communicating clearly, and doing what you can to ensure that you're helping them, because ultimately, as I said, all that's going to come back to you.
Mm. Yeah, it all goes in circle. Sooner or later,
Yeah.
it comes back in one form or another.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And since it's been 5 years, what would you say was some milestone that you achieved, some goal that you can look back onto now and said, okay, this is a check mark, whether
Yeah.
that be signing a certain artist, or maybe I saw also when doing a little bit of research, you did an event in LA last August. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I would say that those two things are probably some of the biggest highlights. I can think of three things. One, I would say, was signing Perc. We also signed Sarah Landry, but at that time she was a lot smaller. It was right before she kind of blew up. I'm not going to say that, we did that, but it was just right before that. And of course, it's amazing to have her on the label, right? She's a good friend. But I would say Perc for sure, because Perc has been such a major influence on me as an artist, but also as a label, right? How he runs his label. He's been somewhat of a mentor to me and really helped guide me in my label, and just help me understand the landscape better, and ways to make decisions, or ways to think about things, and such. And so signing
What's an example of thinking about things differently? What did he teach you?
Yeah, like for example, how to manage relationships with artists, and just branding as well, and also thinking about where, what you want to achieve and how to go about doing it. And also, he helps he just, anytime I've had any questions on anything, he's been there to answer my questions right away. And he's reached out and said, hey, how are things going, this and that, and for example, we were talking about a big music service, and he's like, yeah, I've got a direct connection with there. I can remind me, and I'll see if I can connect you, right? And it's this is one of the biggest techno artists on the planet, right? And he's taking the time to offer, a hand to connect me with someone like that, right? And it's that really shows what kind of person that he is, and also just the respect that he and his label have, right? That's what I'm going for, and it's how do you get there? Well, just follow in his footsteps, right? So again, just how you present yourself, what will making sure okay, is this really what you want your label to showcase in terms of branding or whatever, right? It just, yeah, I just view him in such a high regard in terms of person, because he's an amazing person, but also as an artist and as a businessman, how he just conducts himself in his business, right? Because again, when you think of Perc Tracks, the label, you just instantly think of unmatched quality. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm trying to get to with my label. And it takes time, but again, having someone that came in my corner, helping guide me when I need help, and offering advice, and that kind of a thing, it's invaluable, really, so signing him, right? Doing our first label parties, right? We did an international one in Canada, which was awesome. We did some local ones here in America. But I would say doing that party, the anniversary party with him, it was because it was a Crisis of Man and Perc Tracks collab label night, which that in itself is he's pretty protective of his brand, as you should be. And so for him to be willing to do something like that really showed that, one, he respects me enough to do that. Two, he respects my label enough that he was willing to do that, because he could have easily just been yeah, you know what, yeah, sure, I'll play your party, whatever. But to be willing to be hey, let's do a collab party, right? It's well, now his label is attached to this night. You know what I mean? It's not just my label. It's not just his name on a flyer. It's his whole brand and kind of company on the line, you could say, right? Not really like, it's not like it was a life or death situation, but again, it's like you have to be, and again, as I said, this is something he's taught me, you have to be really protective of your brand and make sure that you're aligning with things that really make sense to you. And so to know that that's his frame of mind and that he was willing to do that, right? Especially in LA, it was amazing. And the party was sick. Like, it was a really cool experience, really cool setup that we helped design. And like, he had a great time. Like, we all had a great time. And it was just, again, it was just really, it really like made me feel like, you know, that we're doing the right thing here. Because it's hard to have reference points, right? Especially when you're just kind of doing everything on your own. And so that was just sort of like a, hey, you're doing the right thing, just keep it up type deal, you know? And then the other thing is sort of more general, but seeing our releases do well, right? Either on Beatport, whether that's getting in like top 10 on Beatport, or, you know, big artists that we didn't even send the promo to playing our music. It's like, well, I didn't send it to them. So, and no one else sent it to them. So how do they get it? They bought it themselves. And it's just like, wow, all right, cool. You know what I mean? Like, that's great, right? Like, it's one thing when your friend play, like when you're friends with someone and you send them the music and they play it, right? Amazing. But for people to kind of go out of their own way to find it and play it, and then, you know, you say, oh, hey, thank you so much. Like, oh, love the label. It's just like, woo, okay, cool, sweet. You know, like, this is good news. Like, I'm really, really, really glad that this is working out. So, yeah, just seeing the support, I guess, from the community and all these artists playing it, and especially the ones that are not on my promo list that are going out and buying it on their own. That's really special to see.
Mm. You also mentioned that you spoke with him, or let's say it doesn't matter, with him, or you learned on how to, let's say, more or less intentionally build relationships, you know, with artists and all other professionals. How do you, let's say, do that? Is it completely organic, or do you, let's say, okay, on Tuesday I'm gonna call XYZ, you know? How do you see it?
Well, I think both of those things could be true at the same time, but I would say that it really just comes down to, again, like, what are you trying to achieve? You know what I mean? In the sense of just networking in general, I just treat it like how I would want to be approached by someone, right? I've been in sales for most of my life, so I'm a decent salesman, I guess you could say. But ultimately, you know your surroundings, and, you know, like, know when to kind of chime in a little bit, but also don't be annoying, really. That's kind of the core of it, right? Because again, how would you like someone to approach you, right? I'm not someone that wants someone in my face constantly, you know? Like, I want someone that's more respectful, and you know, not just trying to immediately get something out of me, right? And so, you know, like, once you have that, right? Like, I'm going to call these people on Tuesday. The likelihood of you achieving more from that, from already having a somewhat of a connection, is a lot higher. Now, if you have no connections, right? Like, you got to do something. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just do nothing. So, you kind of do have to take that risk, right? To just, we'll say, cold call someone. But you can still do that in a respectful way that is not annoying, right? And your approach is going to determine the outcome, right? If you're just like blowing up someone's inbox, right, on like Instagram or something like that, like, they're most likely gonna look at that and be like, yeah, no thanks. You know what I mean? But if you simply say something like, hey, you know, like, I saw you played this track. Thank you so much. Would just love to send you some more of our releases, right? Really simple, straightforward. You're not like blowing their inbox up, and it's just like a, hey, you know, one, you're appreciating them for supporting you, but two, you're offering them something in return of, hey, here's some more music for you to check out, you know. And I always say, if you're busy, no worries, totally get it, but yeah, if you have a chance, hopefully you can take a listen, and so it's just pretty simple, right? Like, I don't think most people are opposed to that. Some people are, right? Some people are opposed to just answering any messages, right? But okay, whatever. You can't really control that. But again, it's just sort of, think about how you would want someone to approach you, what kind of messages you would like to receive, what you would like the content of those messages to be, and what you like would or would not accept, and that's what I go for. Nothing fancy, right? I think people make it a much bigger deal than it is, right? The outcome can be huge, right? So, you want to make sure that you make a good first impression, but ultimately, like, it's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean?
I think it also has to be like a balance, but as long as you are kind of genuine, if you're genuinely there,
Oh yeah, no,
or
for
let's say
sure.
trying to reach out to someone, because for example, I live here in Berlin, right? And also I'm new here, I'm just started, I'm trying to meet people and everything. Also like what we're doing right now over a call, but kind of we are meeting and connecting, and then at the same time, I would like to provide some value also, externally.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it, let's say, a little bit intentionally, but still I try to do it, as genuinely, because I'm genuinely interested on what you're doing, For example, also going out or something. Let's say I go party once or maximum twice per month. But here in Berlin, if I know there's a good party and there's a chance to meet, let's say, some artists or other people who are maybe interesting to work with, I also try to push myself, and maybe wake up at 5 a.m. to go to the club, and then seeing someone, shaking hands, drinking a beer. It also can be like, I don't think if strategically is the right word, but kind of being aware of its importance, that you need to go
I
out
would say,
there.
it kind of is strategic though, right? Like, it doesn't have to, but like, strategic doesn't have to have a negative connotation, right?
Exactly.
I think when people think of strategic, they think of it in a opportunistic way, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I mean, it is in a sense, but that doesn't mean it's bad, If anything, right? When I've done stuff like that, which you have to do, right? If anything, it's like, oh man, you woke up that early just to come see me. Like, oh, thank you. Like, I appreciate that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they can see that you made the effort to be there, right? Or for example, like, maybe you've been talking to someone for a little bit, and they're like, yeah, hey, come see me play, and you go out and meet them, and you guys get to the club early, and it's late. They're playing a really late set or something like that, and you stay the whole time, right? No matter how tired you are, you just kind of stay, and they're like, oh man, I'm so tired. They're like, oh man, I really appreciate you staying the whole time. Like, that means a lot. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, little things go a long way. But again, being strategic is not a bad thing. There's no need for it to have a negative connotation, because you're creating a plan and sticking to it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't expect things to happen if you're not going to put in any effort, right? Like, again, as you said, right? Like, FaceTime is the best way, right? That's the best way to achieve anything. But you're not going to get that FaceTime if you don't make the effort. You know what I mean? And again, being, like you said, being genuine is the most important thing for sure, especially because in this industry there's so many disingenuous people. But again, waking up, putting in that effort to go there and to meet these people, FaceTime and hang out, and just hang out, just want to be friends with these people, right? That was another thing for me, is that I always just wanted to be friends with these people, right? Like, especially the people that I look up to and respect. It's like, why would you not want to be friends with these people? You know what I mean? If they turn out to not be good people, then okay, that's one thing. But most of them have been great people. So it's like, why not have a network of good people you can call friends? Especially if they're people you look up to. But you have to have a game plan, right? You have to decide, this is what I'm going to do, and do it. Because again, like, you're never going to make that connection if you don't put in the effort. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, that's how we met. Actually, I mean, we met at
Yeah,
the office, but then the second time we
yeah,
met when Fraser was playing from
yeah,
6 to 8 in Club Ost, and
yep,
my head was going. I really, really want to go, but oh fuck, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. But okay, in
I
the end, of
know.
course, you push it because you also, of course, really want to hear it and you really want to meet it. But still, it's
Yeah,
5 a.m. You have to wake up.
yep, yep,
Um,
yep, yep,
yeah, on
yep.
the funny side.
Yeah,
It is like that. You mentioned that you're in sales. Did I understand
I was
correctly?
in
Do,
sales.
do
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
a
I used to
job?
work in. I did. I used to work in retail for since I was 17. I worked in retail.
Oh,
And
okay. What
then
exactly did you do?
I worked at a surf shop, and then I worked for um, Audi, and then I worked for Hugo Boss, and then just worked in a bunch of different like fashion companies at a big mall here near my house. And I learned a lot about customer service and sales, obviously, and how to interact with people and patience for sure, because you got to have a lot of patience when you work in customer service. Uh, people question uh, how I have so much patience, and it's like, well, I was kind of drilled into me. Like you can't not have patience when you work in that industry, because um, it could be the difference between you know a good paycheck or not. So I worked in retail for a long time, but fortunately, do not work in retail anymore. I'm just doing music full time now.
Of course. Okay, so you're doing full time. Nice.
Yeah, yeah,
Obviously, but yeah.
yeah.
Um, one thing I also wanted to discuss with you. We can do this quickly, but I saw on your Instagram that you also read like a lot of books and listen to some
Yes,
podcasts. Like,
yeah.
how's that for you? How do you view it?
Um, yeah, so I've always loved reading, but it kind of fell off over the past years. And then earlier this year, I completed 75 hard. And part of 75 hard is that you have to read 10 pages of a book every day. And by doing that, it reignited my love for reading. And yeah, now I've read 5 books in 5 months. I'm on my sixth book. And well, actually, no, I've read 5 books since February. So 5 books in 4 months. Um, and it's been amazing, honestly. Like, I've kind of fallen off a little bit now again, since I haven't been doing 75 hard, but I'm still reading. But yeah, it's great. I mean, some of these books that I've been reading have been kind of honestly like just completely changed my perspective on my abilities, and also like my way to think about business and my career and where I'm trying to go. And it's funny when you try and explain some of the stuff to people, because you can tell that they lack that belief, you know. But like, for example, this book that I read called 10x is easier than 2x. Um, One of the best books I've ever read, I think, and I recommend everybody reads it. And what's nice about this book is that it's not just like a hypothetical, like, oh, well, if you do this, then this will happen. It's like, no, they are real world examples, because this book is written by a really, really successful and like famous business coach. And, he's using examples of the tools that he gives his clients that, like that you have to have. I actually had a call with these people, and I'm not in this category yet, but to even join their program, you have to have $250,000 of free capital. That's not how much it costs, but that's how much money you have to have free for them to consider you, right? Because that means that your business is doing well enough that, like, one, you can afford the program, but two, it shows that you're serious, right? And so I was like, really like, okay, well, like, I appreciate you guys like taking the time to let me talk to you guys, but I'm definitely not that person yet, right? But again, it's like this book is like a real world examples. It's not just like some hypothetical stuff, and it just completely shattered my brain in terms of how to, again, think about my business and how to think about where I want to go and how much my business can actually grow, right? Because you know when you look around, right, as a DJ, right, and you look around, right, there's like a small handful of DJs that are at the superstar level, right, and everybody else is, we'll say, pretty far below that, right? And if you're always just looking at the people kind of around you, right, it's hard to even think about how to get to that level, right? Because maybe your thought is like, oh well, these people sold out, or they're playing, they're playing cheesy music and they're just appealing to the masses and this and that. And it's like, yeah, well that might be true, right? But why can't you get to a similar level by not doing that, right? Oh well, because and it's like, well, if that's how you're going to think about it, well, then you're never going to achieve that, But this book, like, just, again, completely changed my perspective on all of that and made me realize, like, there is so much more possible than even we realize. You know what I mean? Now, does that mean it's easy? No, right? And it requires work. But, like, knowing that it's possible is half the battle. You know what I mean? And so, again, like, just the way, and also like how to focus on growth and like what that looks like, you know what I mean? For example, like, kind of the main thing about the book is to achieve 10x, it's not about doing 10x more work, right? Which you would think it is, right? It's not a linear thing. It's about doing less. And when you realize that, you're like, oh, that's true, right? Like, how much more could your business grow if you weren't focused on doing all the other stuff that is involved in the business, right? Of course, obviously you have to get to a level where you can hire other people, but like for example, like if you, with your events, right? Like if you were able to hire a team that was taking care of all the logistics and everything else, and you were just doing the concept planning, right? How much more could get done, right? So much more, right? But because like you're so involved with everything, right? And it's your one-man show, it's a lot harder, right? But eventually, as the business grows and you start to bring on more people, it's more of like again, you delegate more and more to other people, and you focus more and more on what's most important. That's sort of the concept of the book, right? And it goes, strategies on how to do that. But again, like, just even learning how to think about that, I was just like, holy shit, that's amazing, right? And it made me feel so much more confident about all these kind of wild and crazy dreams that I have for myself and my label and everything, And people might think you're crazy. People are like, nah, no, it's not possible. It's not possible. Even my friends, But to me, it's like, that's fine, Like, I didn't ask for your opinion, but also, like, we'll see what happens, We'll see what you say when I do achieve these things.
Yeah, all of this can be probably also summarized into focus, would you say? Because
basically, yeah, focusing on what's most important. Yeah,
we have so many distractions, I would say, and so many, let's say, aspects of certain projects, or let's say a business, or let's say even your day-to-day job. For example, there are maybe out of 10 tasks, there are 3 or 2 that make the actual difference in the end. It comes down to recognizing.
Yeah,
classic.
80-20 principle, exactly. So it's, again, like, and that book also helped me really understand that as well. And I also I listened, I didn't read it, but I listened to the audiobook of the 80-20 principle, and it just, again, understanding that, right? Like, I as I tell my students, because I'm a music mentor and I teach people how to make music and stuff. I tell them, like, you can go in the studio for 9 hours a day and come out with not much, right? So it's not necessarily about the amount of time spent, it's about the quality of time you spent. And when you that applies to everything, right? I mean, you can get a lot done in a little bit of time, or you can get not much done in a lot of time. So it's like you said, focusing on what's most important, and that is what's gonna really move the needle.
Mm-hmm. How about, for example, if you're working with all of these artists that are starting up, one thing I'm interested in is, how do you, let's say, speak to them, or maybe you spoke to yourself in the past or also do now? How do you go over this problem, or let's say, not, I wouldn't say creativity block, but that something is like good enough to put out? For example, if I give one example, there's maybe a lot of artists who are sitting on, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 good tracks, but they just have to finish this detail and this detail and this detail and this detail. which in the end maybe wouldn't make such a big difference. How do you
Yeah,
go over
well,
that?
like for something like that, right? Like that's the beauty of having a second set of ears, right? And I talked about this almost every session with my students, and it's that when you work so much on one thing, it you become sort of blind to the bigger picture, right? You can't see the forest through the trees, and oftentimes like people are, as you said, like, so the track is done, right, basically, or maybe it requires 5% more work, which is maybe 30 minutes of work or something, right? But they're so hyper fixated on these little issues, like, oh, this hi-hat's too loud, oh, now it's too quiet. Like, it's like, no, the hi-hat's not the problem at all, like, you just like, so having someone that's at a higher level than them tell them, hey, this is good enough, you not finishing it is the problem, right? You not just being done with it is the problem. Then that helps them realize, like, okay, I need to just move on, and it's been a successful journey so far, because again, like, you don't know what you don't know, but when someone's telling this is done, right, you're like, oh, okay, maybe it is, right? And I have a specific process that I use to help them finish their music and stuff. And once they actually build that confidence, because really what it comes down to is a lack of confidence, right? Oh, I don't think it's good enough, so it needs more work. It's fine. It's good enough. It is good enough, right? And sometimes you just need someone to tell you that it's good enough. And once they do that, then you're much more likely to like be like, okay, it is done. We're good to go.
Mm-hmm. I remember also listening to, I think was maybe an interview, or I don't know, maybe a short documentary with Deadmau5. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
I could take any of my tracks, like any of them, work on them for a year, and then release them again. And it would be like better, but how much better,
Yeah, exactly. It's, and look, there sometimes you do need to like stop working. Like you need to put a track away for a while, right? Put it in the incubator, as I say. And I've released plenty of music that was a lot older than it was, like, than when it got released. It just at the time was not ready to be released when I was working on it. But then, I let it sit for a while, and I came back to it when I was a better producer, and I was able to really bring out the full characteristics of the track. But once the track is done, right, like, again, as you just said, how much better could it actually be? Maybe way better. Maybe you do revisit in like 10 years and it's like a totally different experience, right? But a lot of times, like, you just got to move on, right? And I think a lot of people, on top of not being confident about the music, they get so attached to it that they that they don't realize that, like, that's not the only thing they're ever going to make, right? Because often what happens, right, is you make a track and you're like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever done, right? It just could never be better than this. 6 months down the road, you look back, you're like, that track sucks, and it's just that it's always like that, So learning to not become so attached to the outcome, right, or to become so attached to something is really important, because, like, that's not the last track you're ever going to make, right? You're going to be making thousands of tracks over the course of your career, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just move on, because while it's not the amount of time spent, right? On the inverse, quality or quantity creates quality, right? The more music you make, the better it's going to get, versus if you're spending way more time on one track, right? The likelihood of that track being good is less than if you had just moved on and we're making, and you're 20 more tracks down the road, right? That's just how it goes, right? Because each time you finish a song, you're learning something. You're learning to problem solve. You're learning to put the pieces together in a different way. But if you're always stuck on the same problem, then you're never growing. You know what I mean? Like, you're never actually resolving the issue, and then it just sticks with you. And so an example I say is like, instead of using this method that I use, right? Like, it's like, instead of focusing on one track for 2 months, you're now getting 4 tracks done or 5 tracks done in that same amount of time. And they're better tracks than had you just done that one track, right? And then you just keep repeating that. And it's like, again, the more music you make, the better it's going to be, because every track's going to be a little different, There's a classic example of, there's like I don't know how many times this study's been done, whatever, but it's like a pottery class, right? They use a pottery class and said there's 2 groups. One group, the teacher says, hey, you have the whole year to make one project. It has to be the best project you've ever made. And the other group, you have to make 100 pots or something, right? And the result is the people that did 100 pots within the year had way better results than the people that only did one, And it's a prime example of this exact thing, because again, we get so caught up in like, oh man, this is like, it has to be the best. It has to be the best. It has to be the best. But it's like, you don't even realize that like 2 years from now, you're probably going to forget that you made that track, right? Like I forgot, there's some tracks I forgot I even made in the past couple of years, It's like just that comes with age and maturity and understanding. But again, that's something that I help them understand is like, if you stick with this, right, and you do this the right way, like you're going to be making so many tracks again that you're not even going to remember this track, or even just within the program itself, like, like 2 tracks ago, 3 tracks ago, people are like, oh man, that track is like, I've already grown so much since that track. And that was only like a couple tracks ago, just thinking about it in that perspective of like not being so attached to it that you're allowing it to just be done and moving on,
And what about today? You post your track, for example, and a lot more people can hear it than in the past. How would you say how to seek quality feedback?
Find people that you respect and send it to them and ask for specific types of feedback, because it's very easy for people to say, oh yeah, this is great, thanks, but it's like, ask like, hey, I feel like this hi-hat is not right, or I feel like this bass line's kind of not sitting right. What do you think about that, right? Instead of just being like a general feedback, right? Ask the questions that you want the answers to, just saying, is this good? Maybe, I don't know. What does that mean? What does good mean, right? Good for you? Sure. Good for me? Maybe not. Or maybe it is, right? But asking specific things will give you the answers that you actually want,
Yeah, again, asking better questions. What we are trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I do that, right? And again, building a network of people that you respect, that can give you good feedback. And again, asking for specific feedback instead of just general feedback, because most times if you just ask for generic feedback, hey, what do you think about this? Unless the track it really strikes that person, their answer is probably, oh, this is good, thanks. It's like, that doesn't do you any good. Yeah, thumbs up. just heart the message.
How about comparison problem? Let's say, does that cause any anxiety among artists that you know, or maybe even with yourself? For example, you don't want to put something out because you're again coming back afraid that it will do worse than somebody else's.
For younger artists, absolutely. But for me, no. I don't give a shit anymore. And that's kind of the benefit of having my own label, is like I can just do whatever I want. You know what I mean? And again, also understanding that like your magnum opus of today is a forgotten track tomorrow. Understanding that like right now, this is where I'm at. This is the best stuff I'm making right now, and that's it. Right? Is it gonna get better? Absolutely. Are there maybe some tracks that you'll always kind of look back on fondly? Also, absolutely. But you can't really compare yourself to people because, well, it also depends on what you're trying to do with your career. For me, I'm not trying to be comparable. I'm trying to create my own thing that you can't compare yourself to, right? Something that's uniquely me. Unlike trying to be like, all these other artists, right? Sure, I might use them as references and and kind of see what they do and kind of do my own thing based on that. But ultimately for me, I'm trying to be my own artist. I'm trying to achieve things that only I can achieve, right? So you will never be able to compare yourself to me, because what I'm trying to achieve is something that you probably don't want to do, right? People don't understand that, right? That people just try and compare this. So, oh, well, this track did it. Why isn't mine, right? And it's like, well, like, because you're two different people, you know? Like, if we look at someone like Dax J, right? Dax J is a beast when it comes to production, right? And also tour schedule, right? Oh, why isn't my tour schedule like his? Oh, why isn't my music as good as his? This guy is a machine, right? Like, I have a vague idea of how much music he makes, and that's a vague idea, right? If you were making the same amount of music he was, then maybe you could compare yourself. But the thing is, people think that they can compare themselves to others without knowing what that other person is doing to achieve whatever it is that they're achieving, right? So this is an example I give my students, is that if I'm working every single day on my career and my music, right, and I'm growing exponentially as a result, but you're not working every single day, how do you think that you can compare yourself to me when you're not even doing the same amount of work? Now, if we were putting in the same amount of work, maybe you could kind of compare yourself, right? But if we're not even doing the same things, then what comparison is there to be made? You know what I mean? And that's with anything, right? It's like, how are you going to compare yourself to a professional basketball player if you are just a weekend basketball kind of guy, right? These people are training every single day of their lives for what they're doing, and you're training not at all. You just play basketball with your friends on the weekend sometimes. It's like, you can't compare yourself, you know? Now the thing is, with Instagram and social media, it's like, it makes you think that you have to compete with everybody, you know? It makes you think that it's either you or nothing. But again, as I said for myself, that's not how I'm viewing things, right? I'm viewing my career from the perspective of no one can imitate it, because I'm doing something uniquely, like, my own thing, right? Which is like, you know, I want to incorporate everything that I love to do into my brand, right? Music is the foundation, right? But I also love to surf. I love to train jujitsu. I like YouTubing and stuff like that. So I'm like starting a vlog, and also kind of with this whole, you know, this whole mentoring thing, and then kind of being like I don't want to say, um, uh, what's the word? Not like a public speaker or like a, you know, but like just someone that's like kind of helping bring insight and positivity to people, you know, like what are those called? Um, I don't know, but like personal development, for example, is like really big for me, right? So like kind of incorporating all of that into my brand, right? Again, music is the foundation and the most important thing, but all of those other things play a big role, right? And so it's like, how can you even compare yourself to me if you're not interested in any of that stuff? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? There's nothing to compare yourself to, because you're not even interested in this stuff. So like, what's the point, you know? So
Yeah, but what if they are interested in the same stuff? Let's say two techno
on the
artists,
exact same stuff.
you know,
Well, if you
same
are, right,
goals,
again,
one
it's,
succeeds, one
yeah,
doesn't.
well, again, right? Like, you can't control the outcome of anything, right? Only you can only control like what you put in. But at the same time, you know, like, again, are you really putting in the work, right? Like, if we're doing the exact same thing, interested in the exact same thing, but I'm working every single day and you're only working once a week, well, then how can you compare yourself, right? But ultimately, even if it is the exact same, right? It's not like we're reliant on each other for income, right? I don't work for you, you don't work for me. It's not like you work for me and you're not doing well enough for me, right? Like, we have our own businesses, right? So ultimately, the most important thing you can do is just focus on your own work, right? Because all the time you spend worrying about other people and their work is time you could be spent working on your own thing, right? And worrying about like how you compare to whoever else, like, the likelihood of them even thinking about you is pretty slim. You know what I mean? So it's like, I heard an example of this. It's like, you're, what exactly was it? It was like, you are like creating a competition with someone who doesn't even think about you as competition, in a sense, right? You're creating this war with someone who doesn't even think about you. So if that's what you're doing, ultimately, you've already lost. You know what I mean? Because if you're trying to compare yourself to me and you're trying to better me, like be better than me, but I don't even think about you, then who are you really competing with? You know, you're not competing with me because I don't view you as competition. I don't even think about you at all. You know what I mean? So, you know, I know that with all the antics and all the nonsense going on in our industry today, it's very easy to get jaded by that and try and compare yourself. Well, I deserve this, blah, 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 but it's like, it's gonna be like that forever. It's
Whatever.
always like that. It's always been like that. It's like that in every business, right? It doesn't matter what it is. That's just how life is. People do stupid shit all the time to get ahead, right? But you trying to compare yourself to them, there is no comparison because you're not doing the same. You're doing two completely different things, right? And again, you trying to create this competition in your head with someone who maybe doesn't even know you exist, like, you've already lost the battle. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you've literally already lost the battle to someone who doesn't even know that they're playing a game. You know?
Yeah. So there's like an unhealthy approach to progress and a more healthy approach to progress. Would you agree that we can boil it down to first showing up, putting in the reps, you know, doing the work and the repetitions, where that be making tracks, maybe showing up somewhere else, then seeking quality feedback. So
exactly.
showing up, seeking quality feedback, and then actually being aware of that feedback and implementing it on the next thing that you do.
You know, it's funny. Yes, exactly. But you know what's funny is that I had an epiphany today, earlier this year, which was that, like, all of the things that, like, all of these, like, you know, people that we listen to talk about, as cliche as a lot of it is, it's also true. Exactly what you're saying, right? Like, people say this stuff all the time, but it usually goes in one ear, out the other. But it's like when you actually start applying these things, you're like, oh my God, it's so much easier than I thought it was. It was literally, the answer was literally in front of me the whole time. I just wasn't listening, you know? And exactly like you said, taking that feedback and actually applying it, right? Like it just, people always want to make it something other than what it actually is. And what it is just, you know, it's pretty basic.
Yeah. Strange and funny at the same time, how we are as humans. You know, I think we put a lot of times we put too much value on ourselves, therefore creating the expectation creating the pressure, and pressure kind of locking you from actually performing. I mean, totally. I recognize that cycle a lot of times. Also with me, I know I'm guilty as charged here. So
there's someone that said pressure is a privilege, and it's like, pressure can be great, right? If you use it to your advantage. But yeah, pressure when left
it can
unchecked
also create
can definitely,
focus.
Yeah, no, for sure. But when left unchecked, it can, it can hinder you. And again, like, really the only pressure should just be to show up and just do your work, right? But that just comes with time and age and understanding and growing, you know. You can't understand that if you don't have experience.
So yeah, give it time, be authentic. Yeah, one thing I forgot previously, 3 things. Be authentic, right? Because who can be you? No one. You can be you.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's
Like
it.
I said, like, I know what I want to achieve, and what I want to achieve is something authentic and unique to me. And again, you can't really compare yourself to me if what I'm doing is so specified to myself. You know, it's not like we're just trying to be like the best lawyer in the country for whatever, right? Like, what I'm doing is unique to only me, and as it should be for you too, right? So when you look at it that way, there's room for everybody, you know?
And as soon as you start creating, I think also anything, as soon as you start creating, you can already congratulate yourself, because it's that that concept, the man in the arena. Like
Yep, exactly.
99% of all of the stuff, content, let's say building something, creating, it's made by what, 1%, maybe even less. So just you starting and putting something out, let's say making a track, making a video, kind of exposing yourself, you already made an amazing step, like that someone wouldn't do.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to keep in mind that, like, especially in this business, right? Like, everybody's a critic and everybody thinks that they know what's going on, but most people are just talking shit because they don't have the balls to step up and get in the arena, whether that's misogynistic comments from men on women's posts and this and that, right? Like, ultimately it's a lot of it's just people that are too afraid to do their own to do what they want to do, and they see other people doing the thing that they want to do and they're jealous. That's not to say that there's not some nonsense going on in the space, but still a lot of it boils down to people being envious that people actually had the guts to go after what they wanted to do, whereas these people didn't. And it says, if you're not going to do that, then shut your mouth.
Yeah, if you do something, then high five. By the way, are you time limited, or are we?
Yeah, I gotta wrap it up pretty soon, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I mean, absolutely. I can talk for hours, but yeah, I got a client waiting, so it's all good though.
Absolutely. So like a few minutes more, maybe.
Yeah, perfect.
Just one funny thing. I went through your Instagram a little bit, and I saw you're pretty close with, obviously, Fraz and Dax J. I saw you went running. Where was that? You went running with Dax J.
Went running.
In
where
Brussels.
did we go running?
Where was that?
Oh, right. I just saw So we So he and I have a sort of like a sibling relationship. So we're always kind of in a competition with each other, right? Like, who can sit in the squat longer? Who can like do more push-up, like whatever, who can do a better handstand, or what? It's like just stuff like that. But we both like to train, and so when I was just at his house back in October, we worked out, and then we went for a run, and that was that, really. But yeah, like, anytime he comes here, we go surfing, and we go hiking and work out and stuff. So ultimately, it's just, we just like to work out, but we just like to add that sort of friendly competition, shit talking, aspect to it all, and it gets pretty silly sometimes, for sure. But yeah, it's great to be able to surround yourself with people that are interested in similar things, especially healthy things like working out and stuff, because it's very easy to surround yourself with people that are interested in the opposite, partying all the time and doing drugs and whatever. And it's, we all kind of go through those phases, but ultimately, like, if you want longevity, not just in this career, but just in life, you have to focus on health related things. And so, being able to go work out and have someone that, while you're talking trash to each other, like, is actually pushing you to, like, go a little bit harder and such, like, that's the best, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, just boys being boys in the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I had here like a list of topics. I think we covered pretty much everything. So my last kind of question would be, is there a question that you would like to be asked, but no one asks you, if it makes sense? What would you like to say? It can be anything.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe something along the lines of like, and this is something I do actually tell my students, but if more people asked it and it was something that was being discussed more, like, how is the best way to, I guess, view yourself, or how do you view yourself, as an artist and as a, just someone in this space? And my answer to that would be, um, as a professional athlete. And I say this because ultimately, as we talked about, like, trying to compare yourself to a professional basketball player, right? I'm not a basketball guy, but as I said before, I like to train and surf and all that stuff. I view myself as a professional athlete because everything that I do goes back to my work, right? So while I'm not an actual professional athlete, right? If you look at the best athletes in the world, everything that they do, their diet, their training, like everything outside of actually playing or performing in their sport adds to their performance of their sport. So for me, right, training hard, eating healthy, reading, meditation, and focusing on being healthy in that perspective, right? All of that is adding to my energy and ability to perform better in the studio and on the stage, right? Because, for example, like travel, right? Travel's hard no matter what, right? Whether you're sober or you're not, like, it's just hard, Sitting on an airplane for 13 plus hours is just hard. It sucks, Like, no matter how fresh you are, even if you get on a flight for like 2 hours, it's still, you walk off a little frazzled, you know what I mean? And to multiply that by a million by being hungover or strung out or whatever, right? Or just not healthy, it makes it so much harder, And that's why people burn out, because they're not taking care of themselves. And so when it comes time to like do these things that are just hard in general, your body is already like, and mind is already in such a low place that like it makes that so much more difficult. So, and then it like also, going out and partying all the time, like what I'm trying to achieve, I can't afford to be sleeping for like 3 days, not doing anything. And so again, I view myself as a professional athlete in the sense of everything that I do is going back to allow me to perform my job to the best of my abilities, right? When your body and mind are right, like you're able to focus and do better work instead of, being constantly run down and just feeling tired and whatever other things, right? Like your health is always an issue because you don't eat right and you don't get enough sleep and you're partying too much, like all of that, right? And that's not to say that you shouldn't do any of that, right? Like there's a time and place for everything, but it's just important to keep in mind what is most important to you, right? And ultimately, what's most important to me is being healthy. And so that's why I train hard and, I eat healthy and I don't really party anymore. I'm just focused on my work, because I create enough distractions and headaches for myself as it is. And I don't need, like to add anything more to that plate. I already am my own worst enemy in that regard anyways. So adding on top of that, not being able to show up and do my work and I used to do that, right? Like I used to do that and it was just like it weighs on you, 4 days later, you're just like, oh my God, I still haven't done anything. Like, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, because as we said before, right? If someone's showing up to work every single day, you can't compare yourself, right? You can get frustrated, whatever, but ultimately you're just frustrated in yourself for not doing that, or for not doing the same thing, right? And so I was sick of myself, and I realized, like, look, I got to work every single day. I have to show up every single day, and showing up every day doesn't mean you're at 100% capacity, right? But you're still showing up every day. Whereas before, I definitely wasn't. And again, I don't need another reason not to show up. So I just make sure that I do whatever I can to show up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot. I think this was a great answer.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
of course, again, Kane, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks a lot for your insights. I'm very happy to do this again. Let's say in a few months.
Yeah, no, totally. Totally happy to do it as well.
Absolutely. Maybe, when you will be back in Berlin, maybe also in person, you never know.
Yeah, totally. It'd be great.
So yeah, thanks a lot, and of course we keep in touch.
Yeah.